Before there were deeds, there was defiance. Before there were titles of land, there were titles earned in struggle. Queen, prophet, warrior, premier, voices who built more than walls. They built belonging. Every acre of Jamaica carries their fingerprints. The hills where Nanny's drums beat freedom into the soil. The plains where Sam Sharpe's faith rose like dawn over chains. The courthouse steps where Paul Bogle marched and George William Gordon spoke truth. The platforms where Garvey's voice turned islands into continents, and the chambers where Manley and Bustamante argued Jamaica into being. Today, we trade in property, but they traded in purpose. We sell land, yet they sold nothing, for their worth was never measured in dollars, but in the liberty that turned a colony into a country. So before the listings, before the contracts and keys, remember this: every home in Jamaica stands upon their courage, and every title deed rests on the foundation of their fight for freedom. Why this matters for a housing man. I help people find addresses, but what we really seek is belonging. A street number is not a destiny, a mortgage is not a meaning, and a house is not a home until the spirit of a people moves in. Our heroes didn't pass down square footage, they passed down square shoulders so we could stand taller in our own country. Today is about honouring that inheritance and asking what we will build on it. A living timeline. Let's walk the land by walking the years. In the 1680s and 1690s, a leader is born and a culture of resistance takes root. Around circa 1686, an Akan Azante woman, Nanny, enters the story. We cannot footnote the mountains, they keep their secrets. But those same mountains, the Blue Mountains, cradle communities of Africans who ran from bondage and ran toward themselves. The Maroons consolidate in the rugged interior and begin shaping a culture of autonomous resistance that defies the British for decades. Land is not yet a commodity, it is a covenant, and survival is the law. The early 1700s to 1720 turned survival into strategy. By 1720, Nanny and Quao, remembered as siblings in the oral record, lead the Windward Maroons from a stronghold that history will call Nannytown. From those ridges come raids that free the enslaved and tactics that make a small people larger than an empire. Then 1728 to 1734 brings the first Maroon War to a boil. British expeditions crash against the terrain like waves against a cliff, and Nanny's communities move, regroup, and return. The lesson is elegant. When you know your hills, you can make them stand up for you. Treaties arrive in 1739 to 1740, not as gifts but as acknowledgements. And in 1741, a formal land grant of 500 acres recognizes the authority and autonomy of Nanny's people. A deed is signed by a governor, but its legitimacy is inked by a community's courage. By the 1750s to 1760s, Nanny passes, tradition places her at Bump Grave in Moortown, but legends do not die, they change their addresses. Her name becomes both a map and a verb. The century turns and 1801 brings the birth of a catalyst, Sam Sharpe, in St. James, born into slavery but baptized into leadership. The 1820s introduced two more names we must say with care. Circa 1820, George William Gordon, and circa 1822, Paul Bogle, one a businessman and magistrate who will challenge the ethics of empire, the other a Baptist deacon from Stony Gut who will turn grievance into movement. Then 1831 to 1832 breaks like thunder on Christmas night. Sharpe helps orchestrate a mass general strike that becomes the Baptist War, drawing as many as 60,000 souls into the largest uprising on Jamaican soil. January brings brutal reprisals. Sharpe is captured and later executed. On May 23rd, 1832, he is hanged in Montego Bay, and the rope becomes a telegraph line carrying a message to Britain that slavery cannot survive its own conscience. 1834 sees Parliament legislate abolition with apprenticeship as an unhappy halfway house, and 1838 brings full emancipation. Nanny made freedom thinkable and defensible. Sharpe made it non-negotiable and urgent. The road to justice bends, and 1860 to 1865 tests the nation still unborn. Drought shrivels crops. Courtrooms wither fairness. Gordon in the Assembly denounces Governor Eyre's policies. Bogle organises the countryside. October 7th to 11th, 1865, from Stony Gut to the Morant Bay Courthouse, stones fly, militia fire, 7 killed on the spot, and a wider rebellion follows. Eyre answers with martial law. On October 23rd, Gordon is seized in Kingston, transported to Morant Bay, tried under martial law, and hanged the same day. On October 24th, Bogle is captured and hanged. Hundreds die in the crackdown. Yet from that terror, a future vocabulary of rights takes root. Sharpe critiqued bondage. Bogle and Gordon indicted injustice after bondage. The struggle evolves from freedom from chains to freedom within courts, new births, light new paths. 1884 to 1893 gives us 2 cousins and a Pan-Africanist wind. February 24th, 1884, William Alexander Clark, Sir Alexander Bustamante, arrives in Hanover. August 17th, 1887, Marcus Messiah Garvey is born in St. Anne's Bay. July 4th, 1893, Norman Washington Manley is born in Manchester. Garvey will teach the globe to say black with its head high. Bustamante will translate labour pain into political voice. Manley will design the constitutional staircase to self-rule. Garvey's years, 1914 to 1927, ignite a mass black movement. July 1914, UNIA launches in Kingston. One God, one aim, one destiny. 1916 to 1919, the movement scales in the United States. Negro World circulates across borders. The Black Star Line forms in 1919. More than ships, it is a syllabus of ownership. That same year, an assassin's bullet in Harlem misses, but history does not. 1923 brings a conviction in the US on mail fraud charges. 1927 brings deportation. Controversy trails him, but so does courage. His ideas will boomerang home and echo in Parliament and in reggae, in classrooms and in corner shops. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery becomes an anthem because it was first an assignment. The 1930s erupt in labour and ideas. 1938, island-wide protests. Manley helps found the PMP. Bustamante emerges as the thunderhead of worker politics and soon builds his own union. 1943, the JLP is formed. 1944, universal adult suffrage and a new constitution land like a key in a new lock. Elections become the arena. Manley and Bustamante become rivals, the way 2 pillars are rivals, each holding up a different side of the same roof. The 1950s are the on-ramp to autonomy. 1953, Bustamante becomes Chief Minister. 1955 to 1959, Manley is Chief Minister, and then Jamaica's first Premier, negotiating the furniture of self-government and laying out the rooms where a nation will meet itself. Decision Day arrives 1961 to 1962. A referendum rejects the West Indies Federation in 1961. In April 1962, the JLP wins, and on August 6, 1962, Jamaica becomes independent. Bustamante is sworn as our first Prime Minister. That waving flag is not decoration, it is the deed to our collective address. Memory becomes institution in the 1960s. November 10th to 11th, 1964, the body of Marcus Garvey returns from London to National Heroes Park. On November 11th, he is proclaimed Jamaica's first national hero. The National Honours and Awards Act comes in 1969, establishing the Order of National Hero. That year, Garvey, Bustamante, Manley, Bogle and Gordon are invested under the new system. September 2nd, 1969, Norman Manley dies. October 18th, 1969, he and his cousin Bustamante are styled the Right Excellent, acknowledging that rivalry can be a kind of duet when the song is nationhood. Closure and continuation mark the 1970s. August 6, 1977, Sir Alexander Bustamante dies, the last of the 7 to close his eyes, on the 15th anniversary of Independence Day. And though it falls just outside that decade's frame, March 31st, 1982 completes the circle. Nanny and Sam Sharpe are conferred with the Order of National Hero, placing the Maroon Hills and the Baptist pulpit at the same altitude in our national memory. Today, as we approach National Heroes Day, this year on Monday, October 20th, 2025, we remember that a calendar is not merely dates, it is directions. What the intertwined story teaches. Nanny's 18th century insurgency made freedom plausible and showed that communities can secure territory and negotiate with empire. Sharpe showed that moral suasion plus organized action can force legal change across an ocean. Bogle and Gordon carried the mission into the age of citizenship, demanding justice and fair courts when chains were gone, but inequalities remained. Garvey gave us a global operating system, pride, enterprise, unity, installable anywhere Jamaicans live. Manley and Bustamante translated ideals into durable rooms, parties, constitutions, universal suffrage, so independence wouldn't just be a day, but an address. From struggle to stewardship, the modern assignment. If the first assignment was freedom, the next assignment is stewardship. Stewardship of land, so development does not erase the communities that give it value. Stewardship of opportunity, so titles don't become gatekeepers but doorkeepers. Stewardship of memory, so we build with context, not just concrete. The youth ask, where do I start? Start with 3 verbs: learn, earn, return. Learn your history so you don't sell your birthright for a short-term deal. Earn with skill. Code if you like. Farm if you love. Design if you can. Because Jamaica doesn't only need buyers and sellers. We need builders and solvers. Return value to your community. Mentor 1 student. Back 1 small business. Revive 1 park. Preserve 1 cultural site. Because a nation is improved exactly 1 neighborhood at a time. A word to young Jamaicans at home and abroad. You are the first generation to hold in your hand what earlier generations marched to hold in their lifetime: access, a phone that can raise capital, a platform that can raise awareness, a passport that can raise bridges. But access without anchoring is drift. Anchor yourself in the heroes. Nanny mastered the terrain. Master your craft. Sharpe organized a movement through faith networks. Organize your network with purpose. Bogle and Gordon fuse village and parliament. Fuse culture and policy in your ambitions. Garvey thought in continents, think in ecosystems, tech, tourism, agriculture, culture, connected and sustainable. Manley and Bustamante turned rivalry into nation building, turned competition into collaboration that lifts GDP and dignity together. Have a little fun as you go, start the side hustle, name the startup with swagger, add a touch of patois to the pitch deck so no one forgets where the genius came from. But never confuse virality with value. Our ancestors weren't trending, they were transforming. Real estate, but make it responsible. As the founder of Jamaica Homes, let me be plain. Growth without guardrails isn't progress, it's pressure. We must push for housing that's affordable, financing that's fair, and planning that respects both hillside and shoreline. Title without trust is fragile. Trust is built when new developments include community benefits, when young professionals can see a path to ownership, when Diaspora investors understand that the best returns are measured in both equity and equity, money and fairness. Let's champion smarter approvals, local materials where possible, renewable energy integration and resilient design. The market can be a mission field when the mission is shared prosperity. Lightness with a lesson. Our heroes didn't have a soft life. They had strong lives. They didn't have quiet quitting. They had quiet resisting. They didn't have real estate apps. They had real courage. Still, they laughed, they sang, and they celebrated. When you hear a drumline or a reggae bassline, that's history keeping time so the future doesn't arrive offbeat. When you visit a maroon festival, that's resistance dancing. Joy as a strategy. Closing charge. Before there were deeds, there was defiance. The ink on our national story came from their courage, and the signature space is still open for you, for me, for us. Let's honor them not just with holidays but with habits, not just with statues but with standards, not just with speeches but with structures of housing, of justice, of opportunity that bear their names in how they treat people. When we build together, we don't merely create property, we preserve purpose. So let us take the keys they handed us, courage, conscience, community, and open the doors they dreamed of. One God, one aim, one destiny, and one Jamaica, where every deed remembers the defiance that made it possible.